All right, guys, on to put requests. Now, let's make a put request at the moment. So, sorry, guys, I'm under the weather. If because of the way I'm feeling, just pardon me if I'm taking the videos not too well because I'm kind of really um, I'm not feeling too well at the moment. All right, but I hope you'll be able to understand what I'll be able to give to you so far in this video. I believe I'll be able to pull it through. Um, and I believe that you will be able to understand. And if you do not understand, you can actually reach me, DM me, and I'll be able to help you through, try to sort the issue that you don't understand and try to help you to be able to understand it and be able to move forward with your assignment or pretty much your project. All right. So far we did a post request, which was able to create data. That post request stored that information inside the data and then stored the image inside the media section, which is, look at it here, right here, and then stored it inside the media. Actually has a folder called images that actually stored that particular image. The reason why that happened is because of here in the models I specified images. Okay, so I'm simply saying upload the image to a folder called images. So it went there. Based on the configuration, we already configured that all free media files are going to be stored inside, the media folder. So it actually created that folder and actually stored the image in there. All right, so let's move on. Put request. I want to update. What is the aim here? I want to update this specific data right here. I don't want it to be finish my okay. I want it to be, I think I already updated the data already. Okay, so guys, I already actually updated it before this video. So it's kind of different from what you have in your um tax already. Okay, so don't bother about that one. Just still follow up with the video. All right, just still follow up on the instructions I'm giving you. Okay, and it will still work, still be executed. All right, so I want you to do this. Go to your admin section and right in the display section, I want you to type ID. Okay, I want you to do that. Now, see, it says to value this display ID name. Yeah, that's the crashing error. So if I come here, refresh this, you can see that there's actually a number beside this data. Now, this is what we call a unique identifier. All right, for every single data that you store inside your database, a unique identifier is added into that particular set of data. And the reason for this is so that you'll be able to locate a specific data you want using this unique identifier. Once data have been stored inside your database with these keys or these IDs, you only have that key assigned to that specific data, which means in this case, like right now, number 2 for this my data right here, if I keep on creating more tax data, I will never have another data called number 2. So if I want to retrieve this data called number 2, all I just is there's not going to be any conflict. All right, and that was the reason why this thing was actually created. Imagine if you were creating a user data and then the user data had the name Peter, like 3 Peters in there, and you were like, okay, I'm searching for Peter through the name, and then you search for Peter, and then you saw that there are like 3 datas of Peters. It's going to take you quite a lot of time for you to be able to retrieve the information Peter, because they are similar data called Peter. All right. So a unique identifier now makes it easier for you to be able to search data which have similar data formats. Okay, so if there are like 3 Peters inside your database, each Peter has a different unique identifier. The first Peter might have 1, second Peter might have ID 2, and the third Peter might have ID 3. And then once the user makes a request at the client side in your front end, it's actually making a request with that unique identifier, this ID, not your name, but what? The ID. And so for us to be able to update data, we need to use the ID. So we're going to say Python, please go to the database, search for a data with this specific ID right here, and once you find it, I want you to update the data that we have inside of it. So how are we going to achieve this? How are we going to do this first? For us to be able to do this, we will need to pass in an ID inside our URL. All right. So here you have, you see that I've already written a params data in here. This is what it was initially. Okay, based on the mapping, the URL mapping that I actually created, this very one right here. But now in this case, now I'm now passing in the value too. I'm simply saying I want to locate is the ID data in the database 2 in the database, okay, with the ID identifier called 2. So that is the reason why I'm passing this value here as a params. Now once I click on send, this value is meant to go into the view function. First of all, that's the first step. Now this can't do this because it's not the same structure. This URL is not the same mapping, URL mapping with what we have here, but rather it's the same URL mapping we have for this one. But this one actually has an ID property inside of it. So what I will need to do is simple. I will need to create a new one. Okay, path, and now that path is going to have a similar name here called tags. And then right after tags, I am going to have this greater and less than sign in here. Now this guy is responsible for params, for you to be able to add the param key number 2 inside. Now inside the block, I'm going to specify the type int, and then I'm going to specify the name. I'll call it a variable name, and I'm going to call it pk. Now this guy specifies the type of the data you want to send to your URL, and this one is for the data, represents the data itself. So it can be integer here, it can be string that I want to write here, it can be bool for boolean I want to write here. In this case, it's an integer because the unique identifier of the database is stored in an integer format. So that's what I have here. The next one I'm going to add in here is the tags view. Simply saying that attaching the very function that has the name put, you know, to this particular URL right here. And then the name, I'm going to call it tags with ID. For front end guys, I don't know how to explain it to back end guys, but just imagine this as some sort of identifier as well. It's like an ID to a tag for the front end guys, ID to your div tag. All right, so this guy actually helps you to be able to select your URL, this URL right here, in your views. Could be in your views, or could be if you are doing testing as well. You're not going to do testing in this class, but if you're doing testing, if you were to select the URLs, you're going to retrieve or select that specific URL through the name that has been assigned to it. Why? It's because of how complicated your URL is. Okay, so you need your URL. It's not just this one is looking quite straightforward, but there can be other URLs that can be created in a different pattern, such as like using a function such as reparts. Now reparts actually helps you to be able to create URLs with regulars. Let me not write that down. That's a different whole entire thing entirely. But it helps you to be able to create parts with regular expressions. What we have just been using is plain parts, and we've just been passing in text form, text inside. But reparts is like way complicated, and you won't be able to actually detect that particular ID in, or be able to call that use that particular ID in your views if you want to do something with it inside your views. Rather, it's the name that helps you to be able to select that specific ID. So that's pretty much it. So tags int pk, right? Now I'm going to come to the view section, and right here in my put request, I'm going to pass in pk inside. Okay, that's the value in the URL. Remember that pk, it has to be the same, pk to pk. Now I'm going to print that pk, I want to see if I can see the value that I'm sending from my URL endpoint, from my endpoint right here. So if I come here and click on send, I'm supposed to be expecting the value 2 to show on my terminal. Put request successful, and you can see that right here, number 2. So he sees it, right? I can come here and put in number values. I'm not putting text value just because the number of values is expecting, and I click on send, and then you can see that it's actually what's up, what's up. Push request successful. The sun and the sky. Click on send. Okay, it was there, I didn't see it. So that's it, right? You can see this number of values. So params, that's you using params to be able to pass in data through the URL section. So with that, now I now need that to be able to search for the data inside the database. I need to locate the existing data. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to call it what will I call it? Data in base. Just missing specific data in base. And then I'm going to use the tax model dot objects dot get. Okay, so I need this to be able to retrieve the specific data from the database. That's the reason why I'm using the models first. So I'm going to write in this key pk. Pk simply signifies primary key. So I'm simply saying, Python, could you please locate a primary key that is in the same pattern with this primary key? I want to see if it is located. Give me this, which is in the database. In this case, we have number 2. So what I'll get back as response is number 2. Now, if I call this, I can't just call this way, all right? Because if I do that, can be an instance where I might do something. Let me see if that's going to work right here. If I say 2, 3, 4, blah, and I run that, you can see that my database crashed. You see that? So because it does not exist in the database, all right? So it actually crashed right now, and I want to prevent this thing from happening. I don't want my database to crash. You don't want your database to be behaving like this when it's deployed online. So the best thing for you to do is to use exceptional handling in this case to handle this situation. I believe it's pretty much as well the same thing that needs to happen here also in this get task, this get request, but I didn't do that in the class. But you could change that seeing what I'm doing right now. So exceptional handling, we use a try and a set block. All right. So I'm now simply saying try to get the database, try to find it, try to see if that data that I want to add in there exists. I'm going to change this message. I'm going to say data doesn't exist. Okay, so I'm now going to comment. The exceptional handling here is checking for any tax model error, which we have inside here. That is for it does not exist error. So now in this case, there is no such data stored inside here that is 23423. If I click on that, you see that what it gracefully returns back the error message. Data does not exist. Okay, but at the same time as well, we're actually I'm not actually handling this error very well. They're supposed to send, remember HTTP status? I was supposed to send back some specific error message right now stating that I want to use. In fact, I need to check that to see what am I using for this one. Okay, so I'm using status this information right here. So REST framework import status. Okay, so I'm using this guy to actually get me a HTTP response methods, that is status, a HTTP status for uh, data. Okay, that will give me the specific status to send back as a response to the client side, which is a front-end application or whoever it is that is receiving this data. And you can see right here in this section here, I'm receiving a 200 okay, even when the data does not exist. So what I want to do is I want to send the right message signifying that the data that I'm sending the status that I'm sending is showing me that whatever it is I'm looking for does not exist in my database. So for me to be able to achieve that, I'm going to add a second section here called status. Status is actually responsible for that. And then I'm going to call that function that I imported up there, and then I'm going to look for the right status for this. You can see this is even good because it actually gives you, you know, the names of those status. Now this is not found. I think not found for 404 supposed to be it, but I'm not really sure if it's 404. It could be a server error right now, internal server error. We could use internal server error to handle this. We could use 404 not found, maybe because we're looking for the data and I can't find that. Okay, so I'm just gonna pass in 500 for now. And if I actually run the request, okay, still sending me 200. Sorry, this is actually the wrong one. This is a post request. I'm actually handling this in. Let me take this out, and it's the pull request, and I'm just gonna paste that here. Let's see. Let me see, and there you go. 500 is server error. Internal server error, data does not exist. Okay, so it stops it, prevents it from crashing. Yay, that has been solved. Now, if actually the data does exist, all right, if the data we're looking for actually exists, which in this case is number 2, I am going to come here, right here, and I am going to um, write the information that will help us to update this in our database. So it's pretty much the same thing you kind of have in your post request. If serializer dot is, did I call serializer? Okay, I did it right. So serializer, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function called serializer, and I'm going to call the serializer. Serializer is going to take in 2 values inside of it. The first one is the data in database, and the second one is going to be the request data that is going to be coming from the data that's going to be coming from my request alongside with my requests. Okay, so it's going to take these 2 data inside. We're going to pass in these 2 data inside the serializers, and it's just going to handle that check, validation check. The reason why this is done also, if you want to handle some validation check inside the serializer, and but in this case we're not going to do that. We're just going to do that raw here. We're just going to write it and not write any validation rules. I've already showed you about that in Postman. I mean, sorry, in the past video. Right, so if serializer dot is valid, if whatever it is we have done here, if this guy exists and the values we have passed in here has met the rules that we have created, then I want you to save serializer dot save. I want you to save that new information, and I want you to tell us, send back a response message telling us that the push request is successful. An update has been made. I want to be sure the right push request status for update is also 200. Okay, look at this. Actually a 400 bad request here. Okay, so that's even with 500 eternal server error, we're looking at a 400. Could say 400 bad request. It depends anyway. I'll need to check that one later. All right, so push request successful by default is going to send a 200. Okay, and we already handled this error right here, but let's still add, just in case maybe something is unsuccessful. I forgot to add this to the post request. I'm going to add error here, and right here I'm going to add serializer dot errors. Now this guy will pass in the proper error. It's going to send us an error, the reason why our request is not working. Okay, so he also handles errors for us without us actually manually writing this by ourselves. All right, so I'm just going to copy that from post request, and I'm just going to paste that here in this one. All right, so it's serializer put request else. So why is it throwing an error? Sure. Dot errors. Okay, I don't know what that was about, but okay. Now let's see if it's going to actually store this data inside the database. So I'm just gonna go right there and begin to add all the fields in the form data. So name to do all assignments. That's what the new one is going to be called. To do all assignments. Description is going to do, it's going to be to do all assignments in less than a week. The image, which is pretty much the file which I want to upload. Select the new file that you want to upload, and I'm just going to select this one right here. And then deadline is going to be 24/12, and I'm going to say 23, somewhere around there. All right, so now moment of truth. Let me make a push request and see if this works. Send push request successful. Come here, refresh that, and see that it has actually updated every single one of the datas in my database. All right, so remember, put request actually does this for everything. Patch request is if you want to handle some specific data, you want to update some specific section. Maybe I just want to update the name alone, I don't want to update any other parts, I just want to update the image alone, and so on and so forth. But I'm not doing a patch request for this, I'm just doing a put request for you to see this. All right, if you want to handle serializers, also has an option, you saw that in the previous video, for you actually handling updates in your for you to actually handle updates inside the serializer class. If you want to do some extra customization or write some extra configuration or write some extra validation rules, you can do that right here with this particular method called update right here. All right, so that brings us to the end of this video for put request. Okay, all right, if you have any issues, reach out to me. Sir, I don't understand, help me to understand. Then I'll be there for you, and I will help you to, you know, get moving to the next section, or finish it, to help you to understand and progress with your assignment and move to the next section of your project. All right, guys, take care, and on to the next video.